Okay, so today I'm talking to Mr. Matthew Volkwyn, who is in South Africa, but also goes back and forth between there and Canada, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, I usually go to Canada with my wife because her
Okay,
family's
awesome.
Canadian. Yeah.
Your wife's family is Canadian.
Hmm.
Great. And Matthew, I mean, I know you through, I think mostly through other people. This is the first time we've spoken, but I basically know you through other people who've told me, oh, I went to Matthew's program and it was awesome. And I love Matthew and he helped me kind of actually get my shit together. So that's why I wanted to talk to you because I do these
Cool.
weekly interviews with people who've got good reputations for actually doing good stuff and helping people out in the direct response business. And there are plenty of those people, but I think, people like that deserve to kind of be highlighted and be talked about and tell their stories. So that's why I wanted to talk to you today.
Yeah,
And
appreciate
this is my little piccolo here. She's very full of love at the moment because she was in the doggy hotel for a few days while we were on holiday,
it.
and I think when we got back, she like totally freaked out. She was so excited. I think she had got it into her head that she was never going to see us again. We're gone forever. That she'd been abandoned. So she's like been very clingy the last couple of days and been like, sleeping on my feet and stuff like that.
Super happy that you're back. Like, never leave again.
Never ever go on holiday again.
Never go on holiday. Very nice.
And
Yeah, thanks very
who
much for having me here. I appreciate it. And yeah, excited to chat and share some stuff. And yeah,
I was chatting with one of your students yesterday, actually. You know Matthew Klassen?
yeah,
Yeah.
he's a
Again,
cool guy.
he's a lot of credit. And then I don't know if he's one of your students, but he's definitely in South Africa right now. Maybe that's why he mentioned you. Colby Smith, who he's doing some
Yeah, he's
stuff
my
with me right
student
now. Is he a
yet, but
student or no?
no, no, not yet.
Okay, not yet.
Yeah, yeah, no, but he's a really cool guy. We've had some good chats. I haven't actually seen him, but I think he's really close to where I am right now. I'm in Cape Town.
Mhm.
So I think he's just around the corner from here.
Okay, and you've always lived in Cape Town? Is that your hometown?
No, my hometown is on the coast, a little bit away from where we are right now, but I'm
Mhm.
looking to spend more time in Cape Town. It's a big city. I've been staying on the coast. It's in a small little town, which
Mhm.
is fun. But South Africa being a developing country, sometimes the internet cuts, sometimes the power cuts, sometimes the water's not so great. So you know it's there's a lot of incentive to moving to Cape Town and having a base here. And then it's also really convenient because if we go to Canada sometimes, and it's an international airport, whereas in the local area I'm in, I have to take a couple of domestic flights first. So
Okay, got it.
yeah.
And you are primarily email marketing. That's your core skill set and what you both do as a practitioner with your clients and teach to students. Is that right?
Yeah, that's mainly what I focus on.
Okay, so do you want to tell me the story about how you Googled how to make money online, or did you have a different version of that story?
Yeah, so it's pretty similar, I'd say. Yeah, my story started when I fell in love with my girlfriend, and I wanted to spend a lot of time with her. And I was doing a little bit of English coaching online, so I was teaching English classes on one of these English platforms, and I was teaching some people languages in my local area in Canada, because my family and I immigrated to Canada a while back, and so I actually grew up like as a teen, early adult. I spent most of my life in Canada, even though I'm originally from South Africa. So we spent a lot of time over there. And yeah, actually, some people like they're like, oh, you got an accent. If I'm in Canada, they're like, oh, you got an accent. It's like, where's that from? But then in South Africa, I have a bit of a Canadian accent too. Like I've got it mixed. So now they're like, oh, in South Africa, they're like, oh, you're not really South African. So now I'm kind of from nowhere. But yeah, so anyway, so we were in Canada, met my girlfriend, fell in love with my girlfriend, really wanted to spend time with her. And we just wanted to have a really cool life together. We just wanted to do a lot of things. We wanted to leave the town we were in, go explore a bit, do a bit of traveling abroad. And I was always looking at flights and was like, okay, if I save up for 3 months, maybe I can afford the flight, that kind of life. So I was like, you're really stuck. And then so when she came into the picture, suddenly teaching English wasn't viable, because you can live in Thailand teaching English by yourself, but if you got a partner and you want to be the provider, I wanted to really support her and give her an opportunity to do her thing. It's not quite as easy to just teach, I don't know, 10 hours a day at like minimum wage, So that's kind of when I got started. I did a few things before, like I did this paralegal certificate, and I did a few other things to try and get into something more than the minimum wage work I was doing. Nothing really clicked. I wasn't a big fan of the office jobs, and I worked at a couple of fast food restaurants as well, and people there, they weren't too friendly. Like I was just happy to be at work and work hard, and even though I was being friendly at work, the manager didn't seem to like that. I was always smiling and chatting to people. So that was kind of like when I was decided to myself, yeah, I'm not going to do this 9 to 5 thing. I need to figure out something online. And then I got into copywriting because my dad found a course with AWAI. So you may know AWAI. I think it's American Writers and Artists Inc. or something.
Yes.
I think they're a direct response, but they mainly teach people like biz op for copywriting, like how to get in, how to have a lifestyle writing business. I got in with that. I learned some B2B writing from that. I took a program back in 2017 with them. My dad introduced it to me. He's like, hey, try these guys, because my uncle actually has been a copywriter for like 30 years. So he asked, that guy, like, hey, what is this? And my uncle told him, hey, check out AWI. So that's kind of how I got in. But I didn't do anything with it until like 2018. So I spent a whole year without it. I thought, this copywriting thing looks really cool, but I don't really know if I'm going to write for HVAC companies product descriptions, because that's kind of what I was learning how to do. I was learning how to write product descriptions, and that's fun, but so I didn't really go into it too much. And then I just somehow found Dan Lok. I found Dan Lok. So probably know Dan Lok, right? So I was watching these YouTube videos, and he's got Bus in the Bentley, and so I'm sitting there, on my couch just watching these Bus in the Bentley video after video, and he's got a funny attitude, and I was watching these, and he was like shouting, you're broke. That's the reason that you're not where you want to be. And so I was just enjoying that for a while. And he really left an impression on me because I had no business experience or business knowledge at all. And so he inspired me to, build a business online, charge money. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm really going to get into this copywriting thing. I'm going to make it work. And so I went back and looked at the program I had went through, and I just got creative. I just reached out to a couple of companies that I had bought programs from in the past, and not really direct response stuff. Like one was a language product, because I like learning languages. And so I was like, hey, you guys did some really great stuff for me. I'd love to write some emails for you. And then they were like, yeah, let's do it. And so I was like, okay. And I was like, okay, so I got on a call with the founder, and I made him sit with me for like 2 hours while I had no idea what I was doing, but I was just like, all right, we're going to sit here. We're just going to write some emails together. And so I made the guy sit there with me. We're writing emails together. And he was just so patient with me, because I guess he's a nice older gentleman. And so he was just very patient. And like we sat there and wrote some emails, but that was my first $1,500 online. Crazy. And I had this $1,500. I sent a check. I sent the photo of the check to my wife, because they actually delivered it to me, because they were from Vancouver. I was in Victoria. Just around the corner in Canada. And so I sent this photo to my wife. I'm like, look, my girlfriend back then, right? And I'm like, look, we made $1,500 from this online stuff. She's like, yeah, that's really cool. And that's when I got addicted to it, right? Because I was like, okay, this is a way I can do stuff. And I basically took all of Dan's emails, because I was on his email list at this point. And I looked at 20 of the emails he had sent me, and I just kind of I just took his sort of flow and his sort of ideas, and I just put the same sort of flow into the emails I was writing for this language business with the voice of the brand, because there's a personal brand behind the language business. And so I kind of just swiped it. This is like the first time I'd done swipe as well. So I was just winging it, but it worked. And they're still running it. They're still running that sequence today. Like every quarter they make, I don't know, like 50 grand for something from that sequence. And so I'm like, yeah. So I got in there. And there's quite a lot more to the story. But then I was like, all right, well, Dan made me money. I'm going to join Dan's thing. So I joined some of Dan's programs, and then he had this copywriting program I joined as well. And then I was like, okay, cool. This is a brand new program that he had just launched. I'm going to create this testimonial for him. And so I jumped on video, and I was like, yeah, like I closed this copywriting client, and I made $1,500, and it was like the first testimonial in their group. And his copy team noticed my video, and I kind of had a little touch point with them. And then I ended up working with Dan Lok. So I ended up closing. Dan is my second client, and I wrote emails for him and ran his email list after about a year. I was running the email list for them, and I learned a lot of stuff from their copy chief and got completely familiarized with everything in this world that we're in now, you know. So Dan was the guy that got me into the world, and then he ended up being my client. And then, yeah, we made a lot of money, and then I went off and did freelancing, and then I got to marry my wife, which was the best part, right? I finally got to achieve the dream. I kept telling her, I was like, you know, this is the first $1,500, but we're gonna make, we're gonna make $5,000 next per month. And she's like, she believed it, but she thought, you know, maybe a bit optimistic. And then I hit $5,000. I was like, all right, we're gonna hit $10,000. And she's like, yeah, I love it. I believe in you, but you know, don't be too sad if it doesn't happen. Then I hit $10,000, and I'm like, babe, we're gonna hit $12,000, and just kept going from there. And eventually, I'm like, babe, I'm gonna hit, you know, the next milestone. She's like, yeah, you will.
Amazing.
So, yeah, it was
Amazing.
fun.
How long did you work with Dan Lok?
I worked with him in-house for, I think it was 9-10 months.
Okay.
I started working with him in like March, I think 2019. And I was still working with him in 2020. So I think in total around 16 months. I worked with him. I wrote the emails inside, and then I left to do freelancing, but I kept the email work. So I still did their emails as a freelancer for quite a while. And then eventually I just moved on to other projects.
Awesome. And you probably met Mr. Ed Ray when you were in that program too, right?
He coached me a little bit at the beginning.
All right, brilliant.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, he's done fantastically well for himself as well. But it's cool. It's funny, like, you know, people give Dan Lok a lot of stick, but he did actually popularize copywriting in a way that I don't think anybody else did. Like, I remember being at a christening a couple of years ago, and people were asking what you were doing. And I said, oh, I'm writing copy these days because I just left the construction industry. And they're like, oh, like Dan Lok. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And it's like, it's just funny, like he was the one person that sort of represented copywriting to people who were outside the business, because everyone had his ads, like everyone had seen his YouTube ads. The guy was so incredibly prolific for what, 2 to 3 years there. He just absolutely blew up like crazy.
He's really good at shifting beliefs. You know, if you watch his videos, he's constantly reframing things for his audience. And he does it in such a way where it doesn't feel like education, it's entertainment, you know? And I think that's part of what also blew him up a lot. Watching those videos every day, I started sounding like him. My dad was like, you sound like Dan Lok. I was like, I mean, is that a good thing? I don't know. And for a while, I was like, you know, just speaking a bit like Dan Lok. Because I think when you get into the voice of a client, you know, like you start to, I'm quite a young guy, so I was very impressionable. That was like my first experience in business. So I was like speaking like him, maybe thinking like him in some ways as well. No, it was good. And he was really fun to work with. You know, we went, because I lived really close to his offices, we went off to Vancouver, and I went and met his team in person quite a few times. And we had these meetings at the mansion, the one that he puts on YouTube. And he was quite fun to chat to. He's a very good coach, very, very good at copywriting. He's very sharp. He's a really good marketer.
That was actually the part I wanted to know, because, you know, he built his reputation kind of. I think the biggest product he did was probably I know he did the high ticket closing stuff as well, but his copywriting product probably was his biggest success of all of his products.
Yeah, the high ticket closer one, I think was the top seller when I was there. And then the copywriting program really blew up as well. That was the second one.
And I always wanted to know, was he actually like a good copywriter himself, or did he just have a good team around him to do it for him?
No, he's brilliant. Yeah, he's a brilliant writer. He comes up with, you know what makes him good is he can come up with angles. Like he has a swipe file in his mind. So if you write an email and you say, hey, what do you think? He'll give you 3 other ideas that are their controls, or at one point they were controls somewhere in the industry, because he made a lot of his money in the early days, you know, with he just ran long form sales pages, like back in 2010, 2009. He ran these long form sales pages in BizOp, and they were all copy related. So he had to really hone his direct response skills. He's a good direct response writer.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. That's very cool. So after that, you moved on to this stuff. And when did you actually decide that, like, now it's time for me to teach or to coach? At what point did that actually happen?
So I didn't want to Okay. So I was like, actually, it happened while I was working with Dan, because Dan's program, because I joined at the beginning, I actually was somebody that the team wanted to support with the coaching for the high income copywriter program. So while I was writing copy for them, I was like really brand new. And Ed and the other guy that was writing the emails with me, they were like, you're going to come and join us live and coach these guys. I'm like, I'm not jumping on a call with 200 copywriters. I've barely been writing myself. Like, I'm not very experienced as a copywriter. And they're like, no, you're going to jump on. Like, you'll inspire them. Like, how quickly you got started and how you did it. And I was like, no, I don't want to do it. And so I was really uncomfortable with it. And I got in front of 200 people, and I'm so glad that those videos are like, they're in an inner circle, and they're not like in front of the world.
YouTube page.
I was so cringed by myself. I was like, it was terrible. Even the introduction, they hyped me up. They made me look like, this like really great up and coming copywriter. And then my introduction was probably something like, hey guys, let's make some money and write copy,
That's
so
fine. That's totally fine. Who cares?
Yeah, it was. But when you're first in front of a lot of people, you get a little bit uncomfortable. It was the first time I had to do that. But after around 5 calls, they kept bringing me on every week. I started to feel a little bit more comfortable, and then they both actually ended up leaving. I mean, Ed left, the other guy that was also coaching left, and the team liked my stuff. So I ended up coaching their inner circle for like 9 months, just me. I would prepare slides and I would show up in front of this inner circle and I would coach these guys. Dan would give me materials. Dan would help me with some of the content, but really I became the coach for that program. And they kept showing up every week. They liked listening to what I had to say. Even though we had calls for like 4 or 5 hours, they were still there listening and learning, and they were like, oh, this is really helpful. And so I got addicted like that, just seeing people really benefiting, asking really cool questions, and like showing up every week. It became this sort of tribe. We're like learning together. And I got addicted to it from that. And I was actually helping people, and I didn't think that was my thing. I didn't know I'd actually enjoy chatting to people and coaching. And so I did that. And when I left, they were quite sad as well. And I was like, you know what? After I do freelancing for a while, I'll start my own thing. I'll start coaching myself.
When you were doing that stuff, was there a curriculum? Was there like, a sort of a structure to the learning experience that you could actually use as a framework for your coaching calls, or did you have to create that as you went along?
No, I had to do it myself. I didn't have a curriculum. So I went through a lot of programs as a copywriter myself, because Dan would put us through a lot of stuff, and then I'd have to repurpose it. Sort of, that's kind of what I did, a bit of repurposing, restructuring stuff.
So you went out to basically what had worked for you on your own journey with getting educated, and took some of the structures and frameworks to build the program around.
Yeah. So like for 1 week when we were doing funnels, I never really wrote many funnels. I was doing much more of the email stuff, but I knew the basic funnels. So I was like, all right, well, we'll just do we'll analyze one type of funnel per week. So we'll do like a free book plus shipping. We'll do like a free video, a VSL sort of funnel. And so I would go through some funnels, and yeah, it was a quick learning curve, right? Because I learned the stuff and then literally was repackaging to teach it right afterwards. So within that year, I would say that's like the $1 million year, because everything, there was a quick ramp up. I would say I learned what might have taken me probably 5 years if I was just trying to figure it out as a freelancer myself, because I had to do it all in such a short time. So, yeah.
That's amazing. And then after you got out from there and you went back to freelancing again, did you start up teaching straight away, or did it take some time before you did that?
No, I didn't start teaching straight away. I really didn't want to be, for me, I just have like an ethics thing against just being a guy that like I wasn't even comfortable teaching originally there. It was just that I got kind of put into the spot of doing it, and I wanted to deliver because, Dan's my client. I must make my client, happy and deliver for him. So I was like, I want to get my freelancing thing right first. I always felt this imposter syndrome when I was teaching, that I hadn't hit 10K yet. Because that's kind of the big premise or the big marketing message that the program had, like make 6 figures as a copywriter. And I was like, here I am coaching these guys on how to make, on how to like the skill, and I'm not making 6 figures. And I felt very uncomfortable about that, And so I was like, all right, well, when I go freelance, I'm going to get to my 10K a month. That was my big number. And I'm going to get, well, actually it was 12K because it was Canadian dollars. So I was like, 12K Canadian is going to be 10K US. So I'll start with 12K. And then when I feel a little bit better about being somebody that's done some stuff, then I'll get back into coaching. And so I did that. I went freelance 6 months, and the same month I got married, I had my first 10K month. So it was kind of a cool, here I am getting married, and the exact same month I get married, I hit the goal that I'd been wanting to hit. And then about 5 months later, I started coaching.
Awesome. And then your program, because I don't really know the details of your program, but all I do know about it is that everyone who goes through it says that it's like this huge learning experience for them, and that they grow so much and they figure out actually how to consistently make money in a way they haven't before. I mean, I'm not just, complimenting you here because you're talking to me. I mean, you're here talking to me because I've heard so many compliments about you. So what do you think it is that you do differently to other programs that gets people going out saying such high praise about you all the time, or getting good results?
There's a few things. I think the big one is when I was doing the coaching for Dan, I was doing content, I was training people on stuff. It was always focused on giving people information. And I didn't find that it always gave results because I had got Dan as a client without knowing any of that stuff. So for me, it was just well, a lot of these programs teach you a lot of information, but what about the doing part? That was the one thing I felt was really missing in the 12-month curriculum that I was building for that program. There was no stuff on how to get clients the whole way through. Inner Circle, it's an inner circle private mastermind program for 12 months, and there's no how to get a client. And I was really wanting to teach that, but I was well, I don't really know how to get clients myself because I haven't been a freelancer and I haven't even hit 10K yet, right? So I never went and taught that, but I kept thinking, there's something really missing here. And because I worked with Dan, and because afterwards I worked with other business coaches, because that became my industry, right? I mean, I worked with Dan, it was really easy to get other clients that also are influential business coaches. Most of my clients have been business coaches because I leveraged that original name and got another one, and then I had written for this guy and this guy and this guy, and that people on the phone would know a couple of them, and they'd be oh, you wrote for so and so. So I got access to a lot of programs like that because I worked with all these business coaches. I could see their training behind the scenes, that they sell people for $20,000, $50,000. I'd say probably around $2 million worth of coaching I've kind of exposed myself to over the years working with all these business coaches. It's all the same stuff. I wouldn't say it's $2 million worth of new stuff, but it was all the things that really worked, cross industries, they were all kind of the same sort of pattern. It's here's how to get clients, you got to show up in front of the right people consistently, for example, or here's how to create a social presence, here's how to do this, they were always the same old thing. And it's the big stuff is referrals. The big thing is being consistent in front of the people that actually want to work with you. It's mostly that. It's mostly about going after the right people. And so I just took a lot of that and applied it to my own business as a freelancer, and always got clients from it. So I was all right, well, that's how it works. So the reason I think that we do so well is because we just don't have fluff. I don't have, I was doing stuff for Dan 5 hours a week with these guys. My entire client getting process and system is 2 hours because I don't have time to talk about all this fluff. It's if you can't explain it, I mean, I explain it in 5 minutes. It's simple. It's just get a couple of good clients, over deliver for them in a way that nobody else does, make friends with everybody in their team, be really reliable, be really friendly, do the things that actually matter, have the values of somebody that you really care about your client. You go the extra mile for them, and people will remember you. People will be appreciative, and they will connect you with other people, and that's it. And then you just get new clients from the new clients, and new clients from the new clients, and then you don't have to go out there and do hundreds of millions of messages because you're the guy that you come from the inside, It's like, what do the best businesses do? They don't want to go and get a job post. Hey, I'm looking for a copywriter, and like get 100,000 people. Oh yeah, I'm a copywriter. The first thing they do is they ask their friends or they ask somebody in their team, like, hey, we're looking for a copywriter. Do you guys know anyone? And then the
Yeah.
sales guy is like, oh yeah, the best copywriter is John. Like I worked with him for another business and he's super reliable. He always does everything that, like, he's just the best. Let me ask him if he has availability. Then he brings you in, done, instead of going and posting about it, that they always do that first. And so that's kind of it, and that's why I think it works, because we're not focused on all this fluff. We get good. We focus on getting really, really good. And we just deliver the best stuff for our clients, and clients like it, and then they want to work with us again. So
it's ridiculous how like simple it all is, really. I mean, there's a couple of things to unpack there. One is I saw a great interview with a guy called Justin Welch and Noah Kagan a while back. And Justin Welch is doing very well selling courses on LinkedIn. And his course is a 2-hour content creation course. And Noah Kagan asked him, why is your course only 2 hours? He's like, well, because I didn't have enough time to sit through an 8-hour course myself as a customer. So, and I was sick of buying these 8-hour courses. Like, this is just too much. I wanted a 2-hour course. So I made a 2-hour course. And other people seem to want that too. I was like, what a great insight. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And like, whereas in the kind of high ticket coaching, consulting, like for many years, like quantity has been a kind of substitute for quality, where like you get into a coaching program and they have like, oh, we're going to add more coaching calls. It's like, we're going to add on one for media buying, and we're going to add on another one for email, and we're going to add one for general mindset, and we're going to add on, a clinic as well, where you can bring your copy to get examined. You're going to add on this and this and this. And soon it becomes like having another job, where you're sitting through 6 hours of calls a week. And, yeah, you're learning something, but I mean, you could learn all that from a book. Like, 6 hours a week would be better spent actually like doing stuff, like, writing emails, for example.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the guys that were going through the course with me, I mean, I was like asking them sometimes, like, what's the wins? What are the wins for the week? And everybody's like, I learned this cool thing. And I'm like, okay, great. But where are the client wins? Where's the money you guys are making? It's like you're spending all this time with me on these calls, and where's the money? You can learn all this stuff as you get paid by client. I think that's a part of it, though. I think the biggest thing that holds people back is not really like some strategy or secret. It's just it's a self-worth, self-confidence thing. It's like, can I really do this? Let me go work with the basic businesses that don't understand copywriting, because I feel like I know more than them. I feel a bit more comfortable there, and I'll work my way up. Those guys don't know how to do what we do in direct response. So they're not a really great learning environment anyway. So if you go work with those guys, you never learn anything that's actually useful. And so I think that gets people stuck. And then, of course, if you get referrals from guys that are not really doing too well, they're going to refer their friend that's also not really doing too well. So you get stuck in this like bad quality referral network. And then you always kind of struggle, So
I experienced that for a long, long time myself. Exactly what you just described. And it's only really changed after I started to just kind of get some better quality referrals from some more successful people. And then it was like, oh, okay, this is easier now. Because I think all of this, what it comes down to, and this is like with copywriting, it's the thing that it takes a while to learn, is that when most of us came into copywriting through BizOp. Like, not this, I know Gary Halbert had a few apprentices while he was alive. But, most people get into the industry by being sold a BizOp program, like by somebody like Mr. Dan Lok, for example.
Right.
So they come in and they have this kind of, and it's nothing bad, it's just the nature of how programs are sold. They have to hype them. So you get this kind of magic words view on copywriting, that if you just put the right words on the page, hey presto, you'll make it rain. And it's like, yes, but, and the but is obviously that copywriting is like super important, but it's like the last 10% is like that copy, like good copy and bad copy. There's going to be an appreciable difference between how much money is made, but only at the point where there's already a good offer done, and there's an audience it's being presented to that are fit for that offer. And if those two, if offer and audience aren't in place, even the best copywriters in the world can't do shit. And if the offer and audience are in place and good, even totally shit copy is still going to sell something.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some people that have joined the dojo and they got these crazy results. And I look at their copy, and it's like, you know, not the best copy yet, but hey, like, you know, you wrote this email for such and such 8-figure business, and it's like it made them $15,000 and they're really happy with their email. It's like, you know, there's a lot of clutter in this email. There's a lot of fluff in here. You're not really saying too much, but hey, it's sold, right? Because it's the right business. And, you know, from there, they can continue to work on their skills in an environment that will make them better writers. You know, that's actually a lot of the time what you need. You just need to write more. You don't even need any copy coaching. Just if you keep writing, you will learn, you will clear up your thinking patterns, and you'll become a better communicator just through practice.
Yeah.
As well.
The more you write, the clearer your thinking gets, for sure. That part is really important. And what it doesn't do for a lot of people like selling courses and programs to actually tell people that idea that like you just need to get out, you know, you just need to be with clients who've got who basically have a good offer and an audience in place. And what does that actually look like in practice? Because in the early days where you're just starting to learn about copywriting, you don't really know what a good offer is, and you don't really understand the difference between a good market and a bad market. It takes years to kind of get some insight into this stuff. So, but what can you look for? You can look for momentum. You know, if your client has momentum, then you'll have momentum with them. If your client has no, and this took me years to figure this out. If your client has no momentum, your work will have no momentum. You cannot give them momentum. You can help them, like they are cranking the flywheel, to use the oft-used metaphor, and you can put the second hand to the flywheel and help them crank it faster, but you are not going to be the one who gets that flywheel going for them from a standing start, at least very, very rarely.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. That's pretty much what happens, right? I mean, you can't outperform the CEO. It's like, doesn't matter how good you are. You can't like, if you can transform a business, you could take somebody that's stuck and make them $1 million. Why are you getting paid $3,000 a month for a retainer? Why not just build your own business then? If you're going to be the one that turns everything around, it's like you might as well just get the whole upside by doing it yourself. Otherwise, if you're going to work with a business that's going to create the revenue and the retainer, you know, then they're the one that's driven the business to $1 million a month. You're just supporting them.
So. Yes. And at that point, the fee structure kind of makes good sense. But if they've got no momentum, you know, they're not going to want to pay you what you want to get paid anyway. And if you have to do it all, as you say, it's like, why would you do it all for an asset you have no ownership or control over? I mean, at some point you have to wake up and say, no, this doesn't make sense. I'm just going to go do my own thing. So with what you do for your guys, are you teaching them like email copy? Are you teaching them the technical aspects of email about deliverability and all that stuff? Or does that really, I mean, is it like 80-20? It's just like how to find clients who are going to be actually good for you, that you're going to make money with?
In the beginning, it was actually just copywriting, because I was, you know, getting into this world, and I was like, I'm going to focus on the email side first because I got results for clients. Let me teach them what I've done. And it was great. You know, I get people better at writing. They were able to write faster. I gave them lots of formulas, lots of structures. I showed them stuff that I'd written that worked. But, you know, people still didn't get the right clients. So like they weren't always getting the results with the clients. So the client getting side actually only introduced later. It's actually the smallest part of the work I do. I feel like client getting is pretty easy. If you just have the right headspace and you're a great person, you're consistent, you know, it's not so much about like what to do. It's quite clear what to do. It's just being consistent about it. That's the difficult part. But once you know what to do, you know, you're fine. So the client getting part is I think what most copywriters need the help with. It's what motivates them to go out there and you know, do stuff. And it's also the number one selling point, right? How do you get $10,000 client or $5,000 client? That's what people are interested in. You know, I post about lots of stuff. It's like, here's how to write faster. Here's how to make clients more money. People are like, yeah, they like the post or whatever, but that's it. Whereas it's like, hey, I'm going to show you how to get a $5,000 client. Everybody's like, me. Show me how to get a $5,000 client. And it's like, all right, well, I'll give them the chocolate in the marketing. And when they join, I'm going to give them broccoli and be like, all right, you know how to actually get that client? You have to get good. And here's how you
Write
get
more
good.
emails.
Yeah, write more emails. It's like, how review my copy. It's like, you've written 3 emails. Maybe write 10 more and then I'll review it. And so that's kind of what happens. And that's something I've noticed with lots of good coaches, right? They sell the chocolate. People want it because of the chocolate. When they join the program, they give them broccoli. And a lot of good business coaches do that. They'll talk about marketing and sales to their audience, like, here's how to close more deals, or here's how to get a better show up rate to your demos, or here's how to get more leads in the funnel with this ad builder or whatever. And then when they join, the 80-20 is usually like, here's how to keep retention business. Like, here's how to keep clients in your business, and here's how to get better people in your team. And so retention and churn is not as exciting. People don't want to jump into programs to improve their retention rate and reduce their churn rate, but they do want to know how to get more sales on the front end. And so, I don't know, it's funny to me.
I have this conversation so often. It's, and it never changes. It's the same, and it expresses itself in so many different ways. Like, like you said, with you promoting your course, what people respond to, with the copywriters themselves, like, what do they put their time onto? They always want the new thing. They don't care about the one they've already got.
Yeah.
It's always about the acquisition, never about the fulfillment. And yeah, I mean, friends of mine who own agencies and things like that, it's like, what's the next thing I can do? Well, what you're doing is already pretty good. Why does there need to be a next thing? Or, and even for them selling, if they are in the business of retention, which is really what's like helps their clients actually have good business long term, business that can potentially even be sold. But the clients don't want to know about retention. They're always thinking about, how can I get more and more? It's bizarre, but that shiny object syndrome expressing itself in multiple different ways, and that's just baked into what we are, the type of creature we are, and what we came from. Like, monkeys looking for bits of nice, tasty fruit.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, you get comfortable. It becomes boring. I think, because a lot of the time it's more exciting to go out there and try and create something new than to deal with what you actually, the opportunity is almost always doing what you're already doing, doubling down where things are working. Always, maybe in the early days when you're around the wrong people, wrong clients, you got to make a drastic change. But once you're starting to get some success, it's a lot more about keeping the momentum of what's already working than going out and doing a new thing. A lot of copywriters, they struggle. And like one of the things we do in the email dojo, because I have them one-on-one, they'll often share with me, like, on a private message, like, hey, I'm thinking of like maybe starting an Amazon FBA business, because they're writing for an Amazon FBA client, they're like, maybe I should do that as well. Like, what income should I be at per month before I do that? I'm like, $100,000 a month. Maybe then consider it, because until then you have a lot of cool stuff that you can do, and you can make a hell of a lot of money doing what you're already doing, and not get distracted with that when you're at $6,000 a month. They're at $6,000 a month. Now it's like, well, your business is just taking off. You're finally getting clients that respect you. You're starting to build a network. Now you're going to go and try and start a whole brand new game. We talk about this thing, like compounding. Everybody in the industry is talking about like compound interest and like how things get better. It's like, if you've been in this game for 3 years, you have 3 year head start. Everybody's kind of competing against themselves, but there's also that, like, you've been in the game 3 years, so your results are going to compound better the longer you're in the game, the more you put effort into this. You're going to go start an Amazon FBA business. Okay, great. There's a lot of upside, but the compound game now starts from day one. Now you got to go for 3 more years before you get to that same place. It's like, why would you go and start the compounding game again? And then you try that, it doesn't work after a year. And meantime, your copywriting business has kind of dwindled a little bit because it's not been your main priority. And now you're in the same place. And it's like, well, why do you get stuck? So the grass is always greener on the other side. Until the grass is green where you water it. It's the place where you put the priority, but it's not fun. That's not the exciting thing, And I think just being the guy that, what I do is just tell them to stop being dodos, stop chasing after stuff that doesn't actually help them get where they want to go. And that's literally it. Sometimes just doing less stuff is usually what you need, So
This is starting to feel like a coaching session rather than an interview, and I'm glad of it, because these are things I need to hear too. With your guys, what do you tell them? I mean, it's funny you said that, like, the client acquisition is kind of a small part of it, but it's the thing that everybody wants in the industry. They always want more clients, more clients, more clients. What, operationally, what do you tell people to do to actually start to get those couple of initial anchor clients, the ones who are going to be the ones who generate those great referrals that's going to grow your network?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. I would say there's a couple of things. I mean, there's a lot to unpack, but basically, I would say you need to look like a real person online. When people do research on you, everybody does research. They will always do research. They don't want to introduce you to their high performance team, and you're just this person that just, it's too much of a risk for them. So you need to look like a real person. You need to communicate that you have good values that integrate with their team. I think a lot of people don't do that. They prioritize the attention, and you know what? Maybe that attracts certain people, but a lot of very high quality business owners, especially people that work with lots of other premium business, especially like family man entrepreneurs. Let's say you work with a business that's 7-figure family man entrepreneur. He's got like high values. He works with his clients in a very premium way, and then you got photos on your profile on Facebook of you partying last week, and I don't think you want to start that conversation. Maybe you guys have something in common down the line, but like, I wouldn't do that early on. I wouldn't have that conversation on Facebook before he even gets to introduce himself to you, before he knows who you are. It's like, well, do I really want this person that's very reckless in their social life and is doing all kinds of stuff that maybe doesn't align with my values as a business owner? Do I want him in charge of all of my social presence? Like, do I want that guy to take over? No, I don't think so, right? So that's pretty much it. It's like, make sure that you align with the people you want to go after, and go after the big people. That's it. Go after the people that actually need your services. It's not like, oh, I need to be at a certain level of skill to work with an 8-figure business. I mean, you do need to be at least like 6, 7 out of 10, I would say, to have like decent copy, but you don't need to be 9 out of 10. The people that are 9 out of 10 aren't writing for other people. They're building their own offers. So you don't have to compete against the world-class people, because they've already gone off to do their other things. That those guys, the 8-figure people, they just want high quality, good people that they can train up and that they can have at a good rate work for them. So if you've got a good profile, good presence online, and you start conversations with the right businesses, you'll get a client if you're consistent. And it's usually right time, right place. So the creating the right time is just by being consistent. And so there's always tacticals, like, how do you show up in that person's inbox without coming across as a pitch, right? Like, how do you message them cold? Let's say, if that's the strategy, or if it's not the strategy, how do you make a post on Facebook that attracts business? Or like, how do you apply to a copywriting opportunity on a job board so that you stand out from the other? That stuff's the tactical, but the big stuff is like, how do you consistently show up in front of the right people and look like the right person for the job? And that's it. And that's always going to be the way. I think it'll always be that way, as long as humans are interacting with humans. So
yeah, again, it's so simple. It really is those little things that make the difference. We're also, I think, a big part of, again, is like what happens with us is coming into the industry too biz up. We've already been indoctrinated into this idea that there are secrets that can be learned. It's like, they're really, the deeper you go, the more you realize there really aren't. It's just like, it's the same old boring stuff that works in every industry. What makes this industry unique is it attracts a lot of people who are just weird and eccentric, and that couldn't necessarily fit into normal life, and puts them all in kind of these rooms, like in these Facebook groups, which is good. It's really fun. It makes for a really dynamic, interesting industry. But there's a lot of people who struggle to fit in for a reason, that they just don't want to be consistent about doing the boring stuff that actually works a lot of the time. And I would include myself in that at times.
Including, there's some really interesting people that have found their way into this space, and it's quite refreshing. And if you chat with some copywriters, you'll have a good conversation, because they've got really interesting things that they're doing with their lives, and they're an interesting bunch of people, that's for sure.
So you teach people pretty much exclusively to focus on email. Is that right in your program?
Yeah, I like email. It's good retainer. It's reliable stuff. Yeah.
And like just kind of the anticipated range of outcomes. Like if somebody does what you say, is consistent, follows up, and actually is just basically, listens and executes on what they're told. What is like the expected range of outcomes? Like what kind of money can good email copywriters make who are consistent and focused on making money?
I think it depends, of course, on where they are in their journey already. I prefer working with people that have already been in the game for a little bit. So if people are, let's say, usually they'll double or triple their income. Let's put it that way. So if they're at like 2K a month, within, several months of consistent work, they'll be at 6K. If they're already at 6K, they'll be at 12K. I've had people at 12K, 15K get to 20, 25K. There's one copywriter I work with, he hit 50K last month in recurring. So it depends on where you are on your journey and what resources you already have. It's all about that compounding. It's like depends on how far along that compounding curve you are. And the better, the further along that compounding curve you are, it gets clear like what stuff to cut. Like a lot of copywriters, maybe they make 15K, but they're holding on to that like $1,000 a month retainer. And that's taking up their Monday every week. It's like, it's okay. It's time to let that client go, pass it to somebody that can take care of them better because they have more time and they're the better match for where they are. And let's create a service or create an offer that, service more premium business that you're ready to take on. Yeah. So sometimes they join for emails, and if they're already at 15K, then I just teach them how to do consulting, because they're already at a point where they're making some good money as an email marketer, but there's other opportunities, not just email marketing. When you're in with the business, they sometimes need other stuff.
That's right. You and me, actually, one of our first conversations about this topic of consulting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I actually saved that screenshot from that conversation, and just
That's
like,
brilliant.
and I've had this told other people about that conversation a few times, because I think you reached out to me and asked, how did you get into consulting? Yeah. I said, I just basically changed my email signature to say consultant, and people eventually believed that I was a consultant. And you were pretty like shocked at the time. You were like, I wasn't expecting that answer, right?
I was so happy though, because it's so aligned with what I think about stuff. It's like, how do you become email copywriter? Just start calling yourself one and like get good. And it's like you said the same thing to me. As like, the group that we were in that I had invested in. I mean, that was like the number one takeaway. The best ROI I got when I joined that group was just like, okay, it's just an identity thing.
Yep. You go see the little dog outside. Piggy, come here, come here. Hang on. Hey, come here, crazy.
Yeah. Calling yourself a consultant, hey, that's the secret.
Oh, what was that?
I said calling yourself a consultant, that's the secret.
The secret is your email signature.
Right? Yeah,
it basically is.
It's so simple. But I mean, I think after a while, like, because we had that conversation almost a year ago. I think it might have even been exactly a year ago, maybe like August or something. Since then, I've been doing a lot of consulting, and what I found, I've only been in the game for like, let's say 11 months or something as a consultant, but the biggest thing is just pointing out the obvious that's obvious to you, but not necessarily as obvious to the clients, or not what the client's focusing on. It's not this magic. It's not like, oh, you got to know this expert secret. It's like you're just focused on that part of the business. That's all you're focused on when they're focused on everything else.
Mm-hmm. And when you do consulting, do you consult on email, or do you kind of just take a more wide-ranging approach now?
So I started with the email stuff. I thought, you know what, I'm going to step into more. For me, it's very important to stay in the service-based industry, to keep a close touch with what's actually happening. I don't want to just do coaching. So it was like, I'm going to do mostly email stuff. But when I work with clients, sometimes it's just obvious. It just feels like people, like we've just been talking about, there's all the shiny object syndrome. It shows up at the upper levels of the game too. It just shows up in different ways. Somebody's crushing it on Facebook ads. Now suddenly they want to go into Instagram shoutouts. It's like, okay, you want to go build an entire new marketing team. You want to create a brand new funnel. You want to create a brand new offer. And like, you want to start everything from scratch there. Why not? Let's dial in your Facebook ads first and like lock it in, So people are getting shiny object syndrome at that level too. And so for a few people, I've become more of a high-level strategy consultant, kind of like helping them allocate their resources and like their time, and being like, okay, you're focusing on, you want to grow this, you want to grow your business. Like one client, he was at $150,000 a month, but he was constantly trying to, at one point he wanted to build a software company because he saw, Iman Gaji build a software company. So he's like, yeah, I want to follow that guy. Next minute, it's like, oh, I'm going to create this B2B business offer. And I was just like, no, I mean, you got an amazing product here. You got all these great success stories. Let's just dial in your content. Let's make your content better. Let's make it more electric. Let's not be swiping from everybody, constant swiping. Let's be a bit more innovative. Let's create our own personality brand instead of borrowing other people's personality. And so he doubled down on his personality, and he hit 500K a month within like 4 months.
Amazing.
I know it's like this, but there's no secret. It was like there was nothing he changed. He just stopped being other people, and he started being more of what people were originally paying him for. It's like they were inspired by him. They like him. So let's be more of that, So yeah, just the stuff, just pointing out stuff that's sometimes obvious, and maybe obvious to them if that's all they were focused on, but they've got a whole business to run,
And for people, your students in your program, is there a level at which they maybe start to look for a new opportunity, or they decide it's time to build a team, or do you kind of give them guidance on, I'm guessing at a certain point they say, okay, look, I'm capping out in terms of the time I've got. I'm making this much money. I would like to make more, but I can't work any more hours than I do now. How do I actually figure out a way to get some leverage? And where do you point them in the next direction after that?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you're at around 10, 15K, I think you start capping out with just service-based work. Just going for it, especially if you're trying to get new clients all the time. So when you're at around 10 to 15K a month, you want to start building more social presence and start bringing more stuff to you. So when they're around that level, I say, don't have to change anything. Just work with slightly more premium businesses. Instead of charging 3K per client, get to around 5, 6K, 7K. Be more of a premium, get a bit of social presence. That should get them to around 20K. When you're around 20K, you need to create leverage for yourself. So whether that's building an offer with your social presence, not like now it's time to become a copy coach as well. It's more like, build an offer, maybe B2B, maybe create a consultative offer for them, or it really depends. Like people are different, So some copywriters, that's all they want to do all day. There's a guy that's that I coach. He in his past life was a classical pianist, like incredible pianist. Like you listen to his stuff, it's as if you were listening to one of these guys that play in a concert. He can practice 6 hours a day. I'm not able to do that. I can't even I write one email and I've already checked Slack once or twice, So I don't have that kind of focus. He does. So I'm like, okay, well, you're really good at that. What's best for you is maybe go work with these 7, 8, 9-figure businesses and get really good at VSLs and get royalty, because you can go deeper and you can become one of the world's best copywriters. Some people, they get into copywriting, like you said, right? You said it's like BizOp. So their real drive is more entrepreneurial. They got to start transitioning into that. So it really, as you create the income for yourself, now you sort of get to a point where it's, okay, well, what are my strengths? What am I really good at? What are the things I really like doing? And then play more into that stuff. And so I direct them that way. And, sometimes it's like, hey, join this guy's program. He's better at teaching consulting or something. Or like, hey, go this direction. There's a few guys that are really good at leadership and they really love sales. Maybe then that's the right place to go, is build an agency, because you're good at that. I can't build an agency. I don't want to work with lots of juniors. It's a lot of work. I would rather just, I'd rather just work with a few people myself and just focus, So yeah, you really got to know yourself. I think that you only start to learn about yourself as you take more and more action. You start to see patterns where you really enjoy the work you do and where you don't enjoy stuff. And then you create leverage in the place where you're really good.
Yes.
So.
No, there's a lot of wisdom in that. And like I said, this call is becoming kind of like a coaching session for me, because I'm thinking about my own situation. And And there are certain things I do for clients which I really enjoy, and there are certain things I really don't enjoy. But at the same time, like you, I don't. The idea of building an agency just has so little appeal for me. I don't want to run a team of 20 people. I do like working with clients, but I like kind of delivering services or small team, 2, 3 people, and more consultative work. The idea of like, having I've somebody I'm friendly with who has an office, has over 100 people working for them. He's a
Oh
very
my
young
God.
guy too. He's doing so fantastically well. But like, how do you do it? How do you do that? I mean, but he loves it. Like that's his, that's what drives him. But he is who he is, and I am who I am. And if I try to be like him, it's not going to come good because that's not who I am. I appreciate we've kind of gone a bit longer than I said. I said we'd be 45 minutes, and we've been an hour. But I do have one more question for you, and then we'll wrap it up. And that was just about structuring deals. Can you give a little advice? People do watch these videos who are kind of relatively junior copywriters, and I think one of the hardest things they know is how much to charge and how to structure a deal that they actually make it attractive for the client to hire them, and also can get some upside if they do it better than average job.
With email deals, because those are the ones I see more of, I
Yes.
would say the important thing is you gotta be aspirational. Okay. What I mean by that is you have to charge something you're a little bit uncomfortable with. Otherwise you don't grow. So I learned this from one of my performance coaches I was working with last year. He said, it was one of the most expensive things I've ever done, but it was a good investment, obviously, for me. I invested in this guy, and he said this to me. He says, you gotta be aspirational. You gotta charge, and you gotta create an offer that you desire to be good enough to deliver. You build something that's slightly out of who you are today, but something that you always dream of being able to deliver for somebody. That's the top offer. So let's say you dream of, if you're a junior copywriter, you dream of making $4,000, $5,000 a month from one client running their emails for email list, right?
Can you hear that?
I can't hear it, but I can see she's very
This
excited.
isolation mic on the MacBook is awesome, but I just want to just stop your train of thought. Continue, please, Matthew.
Okay, cool. So I learned this from him, and I was like, man, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I can deliver something like that. I don't know if I'm at that level yet, because this was a year and a half ago, and I wasn't comfortable being like a consultant for some seriously premium businesses. I was like, oh, what do I know? I'm this young guy. I've like barely been in the game for like half a decade. I like barely know anything. He's like, well, we've all been there. I mean, the guy that builds a company to 100 million is his first one. The CMO that grows a company to 100 million, it's their first one. There has to be one. It's always chicken and egg, right? So the only way to do it is to create aspirational offers. It's to create something that's a little bit bigger than what you feel comfortable delivering, and to just believe in yourself to the point that, like, when you close that deal, you'll do what it takes to figure it out. And then, of course, if you close that $5,000 deal, now I would say invest in some copy coaches. Get some guy that review your copy. I mean, let's say you want to close an email deal and you dream of closing something for $4,000 a month. Okay, you close that deal and you take $2,000 a month from that deal. You were going to charge $2,000. So charge $4,000, take $2,000, and every month invest $2,000 in a coach 101. Grab a 6-figure copy coach. Doesn't have to be running his own program. Get a guy that's just in the trenches doing this all the time, and be like, I really would love to learn from you. I'd really love you to coach me. People would love that. That's kind of what I started to do as well. Like, I did all this 101. People love being able to help. I think it's very fulfilling to coach. So you get a coach, and you just use half of that retainer to invest in people to help you get to the level that you aspire to be at. And then, you go from there. And so, I mean, with the dojo, it's like I've already created that sort of for them, because they can go out there and close the deal, and then know that I'm in their corner and I'm going to help them with the deal. But I would say that's the biggest thing from like a mindset perspective. It's like create an offer that's a little bit more than you're comfortable with. And, when you close it, then just be prepared to invest to get good. And then you'll get to that point. And then from then on, you'll always be able to sell that. That's the first thing. Second thing, don't be so worried about charging this crazy rate. Just what's the market value? That's also important. I mean, I'm not charging some crazy rates to my clients. I'm charging market value. I'm not, sometimes for me, it's premium. I mean, anything above $5,000 premium, but it's not like another copywriter could come in. I mean, they might be charging more than me. I know copywriters charge a lot more than I do for email marketing. And I could raise my price, but I'm quite happy delivering the work I'm delivering. The client's very happy. I've kept a few of my clients for like 3 years now. They're very happy. So, trying to get that extra $1,000 a month just because, you got to charge more, I'm pretty happy with that deal. Like I've kept one client for averaging almost $100,000 from a client from like 3 years ago, back when I got married, same client. If I had tried to charge them this crazy premium rate, they probably would have dropped me for somebody else a year later and found somebody that would, be able to deliver it at the market rate. That's a fair rate, and it's about being fair. I'm not saying like be cheap. I'm just saying if you're a junior, just do what they're looking for, like match it, get good clients that have a pay that they're willing to pay you. So let's say 8-figure business, they're looking for a copywriter in-house. They're willing to pay $5,000 a month. Get that client for 6 months or a year. And that's a great rate. Invest a lot of that back into your skill, and then you can go from there. And that's what I'd say for newer writers. And if they, if they're still struggling and they're kind of on the fence, then just do a little bit of extra work at your 9 to 5 so that you can get a coach immediately, and then build that deal with the coach. That'll take you, like that's a lot of people stuck in 9 to 5 that want to transition into copywriting. They're sometimes a little bit reserved, holding back on like, oh, I'm going to invest in this thing. It's like you could just do one extra shift every week for 2 months, and you have that extra money. Whereas if you try and do it all by yourself, figure it all by yourself, you might spend 2 years trying to get into this game, and it's like way harder than those 10 extra shifts that you don't really feel like doing, but that gives you the $2,000 to invest in, I don't know, in a coach to help you, take shortcut it. So I think those would be the big things I would say for sure. Market rates, aspirational, work a little bit harder to just get somebody to help you jumpstart. I think that's good too. Yeah.
That first thing about, being aspirational, like lots of people talk about getting out of your comfort zone, but that's a very nice way to operationalize that into actually some things that will get you out of your comfort zone. And at the same time, still giving yourself the kind of backup of bringing in a coach or some kind of paid advisor to help you to fulfill on that. And the people who stuck in the 9 to 5, well, I won't even get into that one. I was kind of lucky in a way that I was in a completely intolerable situation when I got out of my 9 to 5 and got into this. So I just quit the job and went all in. I wouldn't necessarily recommend people. Actually, I would. If somebody is single, I would recommend they do that. I think it's good to just say, fuck it, I'll get another job if I have to.
Yeah.
If somebody's married, I understand why that might not be the greatest idea. I mean, I made it work, but not everybody will. But like the worst is that halfway place where you're like, you want to do it, but you don't do it. And it took me like, I was in that halfway place for a long time. And you don't do it until you actually have to commit to something to make a change. It's just never going to happen otherwise. I know people who are still doing this part-time years, and still haven't left the job. It's like, why are you doing this? I know I've 2 people I know, one person in particular who's a good friend and I talk to regularly. After I'm like, why haven't you quit yet? Oh, I'm not sure I'm that ready. I'm like, bro, you've got like the skills, you've got the results, you've like delivered great work for people. There's no good reason why you should still be in that job when people just don't want to let it go. And sometimes you do have to just let things go.
It is challenging. I get it. I used to be a little bit more empathetic towards that, because I was like, oh, I understand you got a lot of pressure. If you drop the gig, you'll have a lot of financial pressure. But people can figure it out. I think if you go for it, that for me, I put all the original courses on my credit card. I put, I wasn't in a very expensive lifestyle, but I wouldn't take anything back the way I did it. And it was hard. I cried. I was, hands in my hair, stressed about how I'm going to make it work. It's like, I went through all that hard stuff. And in the early days when I was coaching, I was like trying to like bubble wrap my copy students. I was like, oh no, let me help you not deal with that. And it's like, well, that kind of made me tough. right? That made me into the direct response marketer that I am today, that I'm able to deal with all of the stress, and I wouldn't change anything. And it's like, well, why would I want to bubble wrap people and tell them that, you know, it shouldn't be, it's not going to be smooth sailing. So why try make everything, you know, this transition from the job into the direct response market, it has to be so smooth. You know, people actually get results when they lose their job. I know a lot of people, if you work with BizOp, you see a lot of these testimonials, the guys that become millionaires, they like lost their job and then this was it. They were against the wall. They have to build their Amazon business. Then they did it. Right? It's the guys that kind of like float around half, not really sure for 5 years. They don't get anywhere, you know? So yeah, look, I think some people, maybe, you know, you got to be responsible. If you have a family, for sure, you got to look after the family, but it's also, you gotta take decisive action if you want to change your life, and you got to be okay with paying that price and just doing it, because otherwise the alternative is, you know, it's being stuck for another 5 years, being frustrated, and it's just not worth it. Maybe 3 months you get into a bit of debt, you can get over that. Everybody can, you know, we've all lived so far. We're all okay so far. We'll be fine, you know. Just got to believe in yourself a little.
You're going to be dead someday, and then none of this shit's going to matter anymore.
Yeah.
No, it's so true. Like, actually, the stressful, horrible shit that happens to you does tend to build resilience. I was reading a great post today. I think dude's name is called Hamza Malik. He's an entrepreneur guy. He's not a copywriter, but he was talking about how his wife got him into jiu-jitsu, and she bought him like a beginner's course, and he went, and like he said, it was horrible, like going and getting tapped out by teenagers when he's a dude in his like 30s or late 30s, and like how horrible it was for his pride, and how he really wanted to quit and he hated, but he said, look, you know what, I can't just, my wife got me this thing, I have to stick it out. And he kept doing it, and then he kept going, and he actually started to like it a little bit and enjoy it. And then he said what the turning point where all clicked from was he realized that a few months later he was in a business meeting, and that normally in these situations he would have felt really stressed, but that he wasn't feeling stressed in the business meeting anymore. And the light bulb went on. He's like, doing this jiu-jitsu training every week has made me much more resilient to the stress. Like, getting choked out by people every week has actually put me in a position where a business meeting doesn't bother me anymore, even if it's a stressful
You're not getting
meeting.
choked out in the business meeting.
And he's like, at that point, he's like, it just all made sense why I did it and why it's such a great thing to do.
I love that. That's really cool. I'm gonna go do something that makes me face my fears of death a little bit more. I think I'll be a little bit less stressed when I deal with clients.
Yeah, it is true. Like, doing stuff. My buddy actually got me. He sent me some equipment, some jiu-jitsu equipment, and told me to go take a class. And I've taken 2 classes now, and really enjoyed it. And I was like, you know, this actually does make sense. So I'm booked again to go next Tuesday. I'm just going to go every Tuesday from now on. Yeah, just to go and do something that's different to what you normally do, and like remind yourself that you're an animal too, and that all the stuff that you're doing during the week is kind of doesn't matter all that much, because you know you're alive and one day you'll be dead. You have to remind yourself that you're alive regularly, or you forget that you're alive.
I think people don't realize that sometimes. They play the game as if they're going to go on forever, and if you're procrastinating, if you're feeling lack of motivation, usually because you're not contemplating your mortality often enough. There's always more time later. You know, it's like, well, if you realize how little time you really have, that's what all the successful people I've learned from, it seems to be the same pattern. They're always talking about how there's little time left, kind of thing. That's across all the successful coaches. I don't know if you've seen the same thing, but I've seen that. All the people that do really well, they're constantly talking about how little time there really is to do all the things that matter to them, and they're quite scarce in terms of how much time they have left, and that really pushes them to do stuff that, you know, if you don't think about that, if you don't think about your mortality often enough, then you just, I got time, I'll do it next month, I'll do it next year, I'll do it someday, one day. Their favorite day is one day.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect note to wrap up this conversation. Matthew,
appreciate your time, This was a
thank you so much.
chat.
I really love this. I'm going to stop the recording now.